Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny,
And I'm RJ.
and today we're going to talk about The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is an adventure source book for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons made by Wizards of the Coast. Just like many of the books they produced in the last few years, this has 2 covers. This is a level 1 to level 8 adventure, and this is over 250 pages in total, plus a map at the end you can carefully tear away from the book. The adventure is broken up into 5 chapters, about 180 pages, with additional sections like a bestiary, tools for dungeon masters, and new player options. We will give a spoiler-free summary of the book and explain what we liked and didn't like about this book. Again, this story is broken up into 5 chapters. The first chapter focuses on fulfilling some personal quests and solving mysteries in a magical carnival that leads to a domain called Prismeer that is taken over by the horrible Hourglass Coven. The next 3 chapters deal with freeing Prismeer from the Coven while exploring and encountering fantastic and strange encounters and odd NPCs. The 5th and final chapter culminates in a confrontation with the League of Malevolence at an enchanted castle and trying to return Prismeer to its rightful ruler. Prismeer is part of the Domain of Delight, a land of the Fey, a fairy tale-like dimension of enchantment and illusion. If you're familiar with movies and books like Stardust, Labyrinth, The Neverending Story, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland, Prismeer is a mishmash of all of them.
Yeah, this setting is very much like a child's storybook, and very magical in that sense. And the graphic design in this book is the most colorful of the books so far.
This book is a great collection of problem-solving scenarios that players can resolve without going into conflict. Dungeons & Dragons and other third-party companies have a great deal of modules and adventures that focus on combat, and that's totally fine. But if you play long enough, there will be situations that a sword and shield can't get you out of, and you have to be clever to survive. Dungeon Masters need options besides combat if you want to make your adventures memorable. If you don't care for the main story in this source book, there are a whole lot of creative situations that Dungeon Masters can mine from to create very interesting and puzzling encounters for their games.
Yeah, nearly all the conflicts are written in a way to resolve without combat. Usually, in other books, this is left to the DM to creatively empower for their players, but I like that it's specifically and intentionally written this way in this book.
If you're not happy with the idea that there are non-combat solutions to all encounters in this book, you have to understand that this setting takes place in the Fae. In most fairy tales, combat is not what usually saves the day. It's their wits, it's who they make allies with, it's how creative they are. Not all puzzles are trapdoors. In fact, other successful RPGs like Free League's Publishing's Vaesen or Chaosium's classic Call of Cthulhu don't rely heavily on combat, but are still fantastic games.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard for player characters to actually die in this adventure. Um, Almost all of the setbacks are written to fail forward, so the story keeps progressing. Although you can end up cursed, transformed into a creature, or taking a one-way trip to a faraway land pretty easily.
Since we are on the subject about the Fae and storylines, I do want to share one thing I disliked about the book. As much as I liked the carnival setting and the story elements of the first 2 chapters, I found them at times a bit too cliche or tropey. This is the curse of watching too much TV and movies and reading too many stories and other role-playing books. There are other RPG source books out there that use carnival as a setting, and there wasn't much in these first sections that really stood out to me. Do I think new and younger players will love these sections? Yes. These adventures do a good job in never straying to more horrifying elements. And I was more impressed with the final 2 chapters of the story and what they offered. A beekeeping cyclops, an evil possessed kite, goblin shadows that strike out of nowhere. Sign me up. The 5th chapter also has something I really liked.
Yeah, the first chapter, the carnival, I think is a lot of fun. And I think the carnival chapter is strong. There's some tracking of the night's hours and tracking of the carnival's mood. But I like how they keep the mood of the setting and their appropriate mechanics for a carnival. The 3 chapters on the Feywild domains, they seem a bit long, and we could probably do with shorter versions of those. The final chapter also seems too large for my tastes, but in this hardcover format, this is probably the size that people expect. I personally would probably shortcut a few sections unless my players were really, really into it.
As someone who collected D&D toy figures in the 80s and is a fan of the classic Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series, I was super excited about the introduction of these classic characters in the Bestiary section of the book, like the valiant Strongheart, Kelek the unicorn-hating wizard, and my personal favorite, Warduke. I feel that the stats given to them reflect the characters well. There are even stats for other classic toy figures that didn't make it to this adventure, which I thought was awesome for Wizard of the Coast to include. I like the two new races. I was worried that fairies might be unbalanced, but I feel they did a great job with that. I think the thing I dislike most about Harringans is the name. Also, it's a shame that they didn't include other beast folk, but for those like me that want more, there are a lot of great third-party source books that fill that need. I was very disappointed that there was not a section about the domains of delight, the definition of an arch-fey, and how dungeon masters can create their own versions of each. However, you can purchase for $8 the 24-page rulebook for Domains of Delight on the Dungeon Masters Guild website, which proceeds go to the Extra Life charity. For charity especially, I'm okay that Wizard of the Coast did this. I'll add a link to it below.
Another great thing about how this book is written is that the hero's actions early in the adventure are important later in the story. So there are these story tracker pages in the back of the book to help the DM track the consequences of early actions much later in the game. And the book will tell you when you need to make a note of these early actions and will tell you later when those outcomes will have their effect.
Would I buy this book? Yes. This book serves three major purposes for me. It has stats of my favorite D&D characters. It has lots of material you can mine and is a good adventure for new, young, and creative players, or for those that want to roleplay a setting similar to one of their favorite Fey-inspired movies. Fans of dungeon exploration and hack and slash shouldn't dismiss the book because it's not heavy on the action. Think of it as a collection of fun problem-solving scenarios.
This book is fun. I've never laughed so much reading an adventure. So, prepare to take a new type of damage, custard damage. This adventure is the bard's time to shine. There are a lot of memorable characters in this book. There's a swashbuckling dandelion, which are words I never thought I would hear together. There's a door that is tired of asking for the password, so it starts asking philosophical questions instead. This hardcover is probably the one written for the most role play. There's even an improv game built into this adventure. Your players will actually be in an improv performance with some lines provided. I've never been into the Feywild or the Fey in general, and I approached this book with a sense of disinterest, frankly. I favor the exploration pillar and the tactical combat mechanics, but this book has a lot of fun in it. I would definitely run or play this adventure.
So thank you for tuning in. If any of this was helpful to you, please like and subscribe. And don't make pacts with fairies. Have a great day.